Ji-woo stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council and felt the familiar weight of contempt pressing down on her shoulders. She had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years now, and in all that time, nothing had changed. The other species still looked at humanity like they were children playing at diplomacy. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy. Some breathed methane, others existed as energy patterns contained in crystalline shells. The Vrelians, however, looked almost human, which somehow made their hatred more personal. Today's insult came from Council Speaker Vel Tak, a Vrelian with silver skin and 4 arms. He gestured dismissively at Ji-woo's proposal for a joint research station. Humanity wishes to contribute to galactic science? How charming! What could a species barely capable of crossing their own star system possibly offer? Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not from everyone, but from enough delegates to sting. Ji-woo kept her face calm and pleasant. She had practiced this expression in the mirror for years, until it became natural. Smile softly. Bow slightly. Never show anger. The Council's wisdom exceeds our own, she said smoothly. We only hope to learn from our betters. More laughter, but this time it was satisfied. They liked it when she acknowledged their superiority. It made them feel powerful. Ji-woo returned to her small platform at the edge of the chamber, where humanity's voice carried the least weight. Her assistant Bonhua waited there, his young face tight with suppressed rage. Ambassador, we don't have to take this. We could. We smile and nod, Ji-woo interrupted quietly. That's our job. Back on Earth, in a bunker deep beneath Seoul, a very different conversation was taking place. Fleet Admiral Tae-won stood before a massive holographic display showing humanity's true military strength. Ships floated in the darkness of the Kuiper Belt, hidden behind ice and rock. More waited in construction yards, built into asteroids, 742 warships, each one incorporating technology that would terrify the Galactic Council. How much longer? Asked President Nari. She looked tired. Leading a civilization that had to pretend to be weak every single day took its toll. The new batch of cruisers will be ready in 3 months, Tae-won replied. His uniform bore no decorations, no medals. Everything about Earth's real military was hidden. But I have to ask again, ma'am. How long do we keep up this lie? Nari looked at the display. At the fleet humanity had built in secret over 37 years. When humans first reached the stars and met other species, they had been hopeful. Excited, they wanted to be part of something bigger. They wanted to leave behind their bloody history and become a peaceful civilization. So they had lied. They showed the galaxy a tiny fleet of converted cargo ships. They built only 4 colony systems when they had the resources for 20. They smiled and bowed and acted like the weak newcomers everyone expected them to be. We keep it up until we don't have to, Nari said finally. Every year without war is a victory. Every year we don't have to use those ships is proof we've changed. But even as she said it, both of them knew the truth. Humanity hadn't changed. They had just gotten better at hiding. Meanwhile, in Vrelian space, War Prime Daesung reviewed intelligence reports on human colonies. He commanded the Vrelian Empire's 3rd Fleet, 60 capital ships, and hundreds of support vessels. His people were warriors, conquerors who had claimed 12 star systems through strength and fear. Humans, he had concluded, were prey pretending to be predators. Look at this, he said to his second-in-command, showing footage of a human protest on New Haven Colony. Thousands of people marching peacefully, holding signs, singing songs. They protest their own government. They argue about everything. This is not a species that can fight. His intelligence officer Hee Jin agreed enthusiastically. She was human herself. Born on Earth but seduced by Vrelian promises of wealth and status, she fed them information about humanity's military readiness, or rather, the lack of it. Earth's navy is a joke, she reported. Old ships with outdated weapons. Their soldiers spend more time in parades than in combat training. They haven't fought a real war in decades, Daesung smiled. The Vrelian Empire needed new resources. New worlds. Humanity had 4 nice colony systems. Barely defended. It would be easy. He began planning. Back at the Galactic Council, Ji-Woo received a formal communication from the Vrelian Empire. She read it 3 times, hoping she had misunderstood. But the words were clear. The Vrelians demanded that humanity surrender 2 of their 4 colony systems as tribute to the Empire. They had 7 days to comply. Ji-Woo immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth. President Nari called an emergency meeting of the War Council. For 6 days, humanity debated. Some argued for surrender. 2 systems weren't worth a war. Others argued that giving in to extortion would only invite more demands. Admiral Tae-Wan listened to both sides, then stood and spoke just one sentence. If we give them 2 systems today, they'll come for the other 2 tomorrow. And then Earth. The vote was unanimous. On the 7th day, Ji-Woo stood before the Galactic Council again. Every delegate watched her, curious about humanity's response. Most expected surrender. Some hoped for it. The Vrelians looked smug and confident. The Vrelian Empire has requested 2 of humanity's colony systems, Ji-Woo began. Her voice was steady. We have consulted with our government. We have considered all options. We have thought about this very carefully. She paused and looked directly at War Prime Dae-Sung, who sat in the Vrelian delegation with a satisfied smile on his face. Our answer is no. The chamber fell silent. Dae-Sung's smile faded. Several delegates gasped. Humanity had never refused anything before. Never stood firm. Never said no. You refuse? Dae-Sung stood, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of disbelief. Do you understand what you're doing? We will take what we want. Your little cargo ships cannot stop us. Ji-Woo felt something shift inside her. She had been polite for 12 years. Diplomatic for 12 years. Soft and careful and weak for 12 years. And she was tired of it. Then come and take them, she said quietly. The words hung in the air like a challenge, like a threat, like a promise. Dae-Sung laughed. Most of the council laughed with him. Humanity's defiance seemed like the tantrum of a child. Brave words from a species with no ability to back them up. But Ji-Woo didn't smile anymore. She didn't bow. She simply watched as Dae-Sung and his delegation left the chamber, already planning their attack. She activated her communicator and sent one word to Earth: incoming. In the bunker beneath Seoul, Admiral Tae-Won received the message. He looked at President Nari, who nodded slowly. They had both known this day would come eventually, hoped it wouldn't, but known it would. Tae-Won activated Protocol Valkyrie. Across the solar system, hidden bases received the signal. Crews who had trained in secret for decades moved to battle stations. Ships that had never been seen by alien eyes powered up their reactors. Humanity had spent 37 years pretending to be peaceful, pretending to be weak, pretending to have forgotten how to make war. The pretending was over. In the cold darkness of the Kuiper Belt, running lights began to glow on 742 warships. Each one bore a name. Each one carried the hopes and fears of a species that had tried so hard to be better than its history. But when forced to choose between peace and survival, humanity would always choose survival. Always. The galaxy was about to remember why Earth's dominant species had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a death world. Why they had conquered their own planet before reaching for the stars. Why they had unified only when they found something bigger to fight. The Vrelians thought humanity wouldn't retaliate. They thought wrong. The Vrelian fleet arrived at New Haven Colony exactly 3 days after the deadline expired. 60 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a formation designed to intimidate. Their hulls gleamed with fresh paint and pride. They expected an easy victory. Captain Young-Sik watched them come from his command chair aboard Citadel 9, one of 3 orbital defense platforms protecting the colony. He was 43 years old and had never fired a weapon in anger. None of them had. Earth's defense forces trained constantly, but always in simulation. Always in secret. This was real. Sir, they're hailing us, reported his communications officer. Put them through. War Prime Dae-Sung's face appeared on the main screen. He looked amused. Human station. You are ordered to stand down immediately. Surrender your platform and evacuate the colony. You have 1 hour. Young Sik thought about his wife and daughter in the residential dome below. He thought about the 3 million people who called New Haven home. He thought about the orders he had received from Earth. Hold as long as possible. Make them pay for every meter. And make sure the galaxy sees what they do. War Prime Dae Sung. Young Sik replied calmly. This is human territory. You are the ones who need to leave. Dae Sung's amusement faded. You have antique defense platforms and no fleet. We have 60 capital ships. This is not a negotiation. This is an execution. Then you'd better get started, Young Sik said, and cut the transmission. Alarms blared across all 3 platforms. Every human in the defense force knew what was coming. They had known since the moment the Vrelians made their demands. But knowing didn't make it easier. It didn't stop hands from shaking or hearts from pounding. Young Sik opened a channel to the other 2 platform commanders. For Earth, for New Haven, for every human who comes after us. For Earth, they replied. The Vrelian fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up space like a storm of green lightning. They slammed into Citadel 9's shields with tremendous force. The platform shuddered. Lights flickered. Young Sik gripped his armrests and watched the shield strength drop on his tactical display. Return fire, he ordered. The defense platforms were old by galactic standards. Built from technology humanity had traded for, or stolen, and reverse-engineered. Their railguns fired solid projectiles at high velocity, not as sophisticated as energy weapons, but effective. 3 Vrelian ships took direct hits, their shields flaring bright. But it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. Citadel 7 died first. A concentrated barrage from 10 Vrelian ships overwhelmed its shields and tore the platform apart. 300 crew members died in an instant. Young Sik watched it happen on his screen and felt sick. Keep firing, he ordered. Make every shot count. The battle became a grinding nightmare. The human platforms fought with everything they had. Railguns fired until their barrels glowed red. Missile pods launched until they were empty. Shield generators burned out and were replaced by backup systems, which also burned out. Down on the colony surface, 3 million civilians watched the battle in the sky. Some prayed, some cried. Some just held their loved ones and waited for the end. Mayor Sora had ordered a total evacuation 3 days ago, but where could they go? The colony had 6 transport ships, barely enough for 50,000 people. She stood in the emergency command center and made impossible decisions about who would get to leave and who would stay behind. Priority to children and their parents, she ordered. Medical personnel. Scientists with critical research. Everyone else, her voice broke. Everyone else stays. The transports launched, racing for the edge of the system where they might have a chance to jump to faster than light and escape. Vrelian fighters moved to intercept them. Young Sik saw it happening. Citadel 9 to all units, he broadcast. Cover those transports. Everything we have. The defense platforms shifted their fire, targeting the fighters chasing the civilian ships. They managed to destroy 12 fighters, giving the transports precious seconds. 4 transports made it to the jump point and vanished into faster than light. 2 didn't. Young Sik watched them die. Watched the bright flashes as Vrelian missiles hit civilian ships full of children. He closed his eyes for just a moment, letting the rage and grief wash over him. Then he opened them again and kept fighting. Citadel 3 lasted another 20 minutes before it fell. The platform's commander, Captain Bo Ra, broadcast a final message before her reactor went critical. Tell Earth we held. Tell them we made it cost. Now only Citadel 9 remained. Young Sik's platform was a wreck. Half the guns were offline. The shields were gone. Hull breaches on 12 decks. Life support failing. But they kept fighting because surrender wasn't an option. Because Earth needed time. Because every minute they held was another minute for those transports to get away. The Vrelians seemed to realize the platform wouldn't quit. Dae Sung ordered a final assault. 20 ships concentrated their fire on Citadel 9. The station shook itself apart under the barrage. Young Sik knew he had seconds left. He activated the station's emergency beacon, the quantum-entangled communicator that would send one final message back to Earth. It would burn out the device completely, but that didn't matter now. He recorded quickly. "This is Captain Youngsik, Citadel 9. New Haven is lost. 3 million souls. They jammed all normal communications. But this should get through. Remember New Haven, remember us, make them pay." He hit transmit just as the reactor lost containment. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from the colony surface. Mayor Sora watched the last defense platform die and knew what came next. The Vrelian fleet moved into orbital positions around New Haven. Dae Sung's face appeared on every screen in the colony. "People of New Haven, your military has fallen. You are now subjects of the Vrelian Empire. Remain in your homes. Do not resist. Any attempt at resistance will be met with lethal force." Some people obeyed. Most didn't have a choice. But a few, a brave few, grabbed whatever weapons they could find and prepared to fight. Not because they thought they could win, but because they were human, and humans didn't bow easily. The Vrelian occupation forces landed in the main dome. They expected broken civilians, ready to submit. Instead, they found people who threw rocks, who attacked with tools, who fought with their bare hands. It didn't matter that they had no chance. It mattered that they tried. Dae Sung was furious. He had expected an easy conquest, not this stubborn resistance. He made an example of the fighters. Public executions in the central plaza. Hundreds at first, then thousands. The message was clear: obey or die. Most people obeyed. They had families to protect, children to keep safe. The resistance ended not because people stopped being angry, but because they stopped having the strength to act on that anger. But they remembered every face, every name, every person who died fighting. Far away, at the edge of the solar system, one damaged probe tumbled through space. It had been hit by debris from Citadel 9's destruction. Its engines were offline. Its sensors barely functioned, but its quantum-entangled communicator was intact. The message from Youngsik transmitted across instantaneous quantum channels to Earth. It arrived in the War Council chambers beneath Seoul 4 hours after New Haven fell. Admiral Tae-won received the transmission first. He watched the recording of Youngsik's final moments, watched the defense platforms die, watched the colony fall. When it ended, he sat in silence for a long moment. President Nari entered the chamber. "Admiral?" Tae-won played the message for her. She watched without expression, but her hands gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. 3 million, she whispered. "They killed 3 million of our people, and they jammed all communications so we would find out slowly." Tae-won added, "So the discovery would hurt more. They wanted us to find the ruins and be afraid." Nari looked at him. In her eyes, he saw the end of 37 years of pretending. The end of trying to be peaceful. The end of hoping humanity could be better than its nature. "Protocol Valkyrie?" she asked. "Already activated when they made their demands," Tae-won confirmed. "The fleet is ready. We can launch within the hour," she nodded slowly. "Then authorize full deployment. No holding back, no mercy. They wanted to see what humanity does when pushed. Let's show them." Tae-won stood and saluted. "Yes, ma'am." "What are our rules of engagement?" Nari thought about 3 million dead. Thought about Captain Youngsik's final message. Thought about every human who died, begging for help that came too late. "Total war," she said. "Make them understand what they've done. Make them regret it. And make sure every species in the galaxy sees what happens when you massacre humans." Suvert, the orders went out within minutes. Across the solar system, hidden shipyards came alive. Crews who had trained in secret for decades boarded ships that had never been seen by alien eyes. Weapons that violated a dozen galactic treaties powered up. Humanity's true military, hidden for 37 years, prepared to reveal itself. The Vrelians thought humanity wouldn't retaliate. They thought humans were too soft, too civilized, too peaceful. They were about to learn the truth. Humanity had never stopped being predators. They had just gotten very, very good at pretending. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session 12 hours after New Haven fell. Ambassador Jiwoo sat in humanity's designated spot at the edge of the chamber, her face carefully blank. She had received orders from Earth, and those orders were simple. Say nothing, reveal nothing, and wait. War Prime Dae-sung stood at the central podium, addressing the council with confidence. The human colony of New Haven has been pacified and brought under Vrelian control. They resisted unlawfully, and we were forced to use appropriate measures to restore order. Appropriate measures. Ji-woo's hands clenched under the table where no one could see. 3 million dead, and he called it appropriate measures. Council Speaker Veltok asked the expected questions. Were there casualties among the colonial population? Some, Dae-sung admitted casually. Perhaps a few thousand resistors. The rest have peacefully accepted Vrelian authority. A few thousand. The lie was so enormous that Ji-woo almost laughed. But she kept her face neutral and said nothing. Other council members offered token concerns. Perhaps a formal investigation? Maybe economic sanctions? But everyone knew nothing would happen. The Vrelians were too powerful. Their military too strong. The council had no enforcement arm, no real authority. They could condemn actions but not stop them. Ji-woo waded through 2 hours of meaningless debate. Representatives from weaker species expressed sympathy for humanity. Stronger species sided with the Vrelians. A few abstained, not wanting to take sides. It was politics as usual in the Galactic Council. Then the chamber doors opened. Admiral Taewon entered in full military dress uniform. It was the first time any council member had seen a human in anything other than diplomatic robes. The uniform was black, with silver trim, covered in decorations that meant nothing to the aliens but spoke volumes about Earth's hidden military structure. Behind him marched 20 soldiers in powered armor. Not the ceremonial guards other species brought to council meetings. Real combat armor, scarred from training exercises. Bristling with weapons that made the council's security forces look like children with toys. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to watch the humans cross the chamber floor. Ji-woo stood and moved aside as Taewon took her place at the podium. Members of the Galactic Council, Taewon began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. I am Fleet Admiral Taewon of the United World Space Force. I am here to inform you that everything you know about humanity is a lie. The statement hung in the air. Several delegates began talking at once. Council Speaker Veltok called for order. Admiral, Veltok said carefully, this is most irregular. Ambassador Ji-woo speaks for humanity in this chamber. Not anymore, Taewon replied. He placed a small device on the podium. It activated, projecting a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Ambassador Ji-woo has done an excellent job for 37 years. She smiled when you insulted us. She bowed when you dismissed us. She played the role we asked her to play, the role of a weak, peaceful species trying to find its place among the stars. The hologram shifted, showing classified documents, military budgets, ship construction records, weapons development programs. We lied to you, Taewon continued. From the moment we joined this council, we lied about everything that mattered. Our military strength, our technological capabilities, our true nature. The hologram now showed images of ships. Hundreds of ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything in the council's database. Delegates leaned forward, studying the designs with growing alarm. Earth spends 43% of its total economic output on military development, Taewon explained. We have 742 warships hidden in construction yards throughout our solar system. We have weapons technology reverse-engineered from every species we've traded with, improved, and weaponized. Dae-sung stood abruptly. This is propaganda. Humans don't have the capability. Sit down, Taewon interrupted coldly. You'll speak when I'm finished. The Admiral's tone carried such authority that Dae-sung actually hesitated. The Vrelian war leader had conquered star systems, commanded fleets, brought entire civilizations to their knees. But something in Taewon's voice made him pause. The hologram shifted again, showing historical records, humanity's wars. Images flashed past. Trenches filled with bodies, cities reduced to ash, weapons of mass destruction, conflicts that killed millions. The council watched in growing horror as Earth's bloody history unfolded before them. "We are a warrior species," Taewon said quietly. "We spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. We developed weapons that could end all life on our planet. We fought wars over resources, over religion, over ideology, over land. We almost destroyed ourselves a dozen times." The images continued. Nuclear explosions, chemical weapons, biological warfare. Humanity's darkest moments displayed for all to see. "When we finally reached the stars," Taewon continued, "we made a decision. We wanted to be better. We wanted to leave that history behind. So we built a small defensive fleet and hid the rest. We acted peaceful, diplomatic, weak. We hoped that if we pretended long enough, it would become true." The hologram now showed New Haven before the attack, a thriving colony, children playing in parks, families in their homes. 3 million people living peaceful lives. "For 37 years, our deception worked," Taewon said. "We joined the council. We traded with other species. We built colonies. We had no wars, no conflicts. We started to believe we had actually changed." The image shifted to New Haven burning. Bodies in the streets, destroyed buildings. The aftermath of the Vrelian attack. "Then the Vrelians killed 3 million of our people." The council chamber erupted. Some delegates demanded proof. Others called for sanctions against the Vrelians. A few simply stared at the images in shock. Council Speaker Veltok banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! We must have order." Taewon waited for the noise to die down. When he spoke again, his voice was even colder. War Prime Dae-sung claimed a few thousand casualties. "The truth is, 3 million dead. Men, women, children. They jammed all communications, so we couldn't call for help. They executed anyone who resisted. They wanted to make an example of us." He looked directly at Dae-sung. "They thought humanity was too weak to retaliate. They thought wrong." The hologram now showed the current status of Earth's fleet. Ships moving into formation. Weapons being armed. An entire military machine activating after decades of silence. "We came to the stars hoping we could be peaceful," Taewon said. "We wanted to be the civilization of our dreams, not the civilization of our history. But you've reminded us what we are. You've shown us that the galaxy respects only strength." The Admiral pulled out a data chip and inserted it into the podium. "This contains evidence of the New Haven massacre. Sensor logs. Survivor testimonies. Visual records of Vrelian war crimes. I'm submitting it to the Council for formal review." Veltok accepted the chip with trembling hands. "Admiral, what does Earth intend to do?" Taewon smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "The United World Space Force has been authorized for full deployment. 300 warships are currently en route to Vrelian space. Their mission is to extract the war criminals responsible for New Haven and bring them to justice." Dae-sung laughed. 300 ships against the entire Vrelian Empire? You've gone mad. We have thousands of vessels. Your hidden fleet is impressive, but you're still outnumbered. Outnumbered, yes, Taewon agreed. But you're making the same mistake you made at New Haven. You think numbers matter more than capability. The hologram shifted one final time, showing detailed specifications of human weapons. Railguns that could fire projectiles at relativistic speeds. Directed energy weapons powered by antimatter. Point defense systems that could track thousands of targets simultaneously. Shield technology that could withstand sustained bombardment. We've had 37 years to prepare for this moment, Taewon said. 37 years to study galactic warfare. 37 years to identify weaknesses in every major military force. 37 years to build weapons specifically designed to counter your tactics. He paused, letting that sink in. The Vrelian Empire has 4,000 ships built for conventional warfare. We have 300 ships built specifically to kill Vrelians. Which do you think wins? The chamber fell silent. Delegates looked at each other nervously. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and no one knew what would happen next. President Nari's voice came through the hologram, broadcast from Earth. The Galactic Council has failed to maintain peace, failed to protect the innocent, failed to enforce any meaningful justice. Humanity will not make the same mistake. She appeared in the projection, standing in the War Council chambers. We gave the Vrelians 1 hour to surrender their government for trial. That hour expired 10 minutes ago. They refused. As of now, a state of war exists between Earth and the Vrelian Empire. The council erupted again. This time, Veltok didn't even try to restore order. Taewon gathered his data chip and stepped down from the podium. As he walked toward the exit, delegates from smaller species approached him cautiously. "Admiral," one of them asked, "what happens now?" Taewon stopped and looked back at the chamber. At the Vrelians, who seemed less confident now. At the council members who had dismissed humanity for decades. At Jiwoo, who stood straight and proud for the first time in 12 years. "Now," he said simply, "you learn what happens when you mistake humanity's kindness for weakness. When you confuse our patience with cowardice. When you kill our people and think there will be no consequences." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. The 300 ships I mentioned? That's just the vanguard. The rest of the fleet is preparing for deployment. If anyone else decides to join the Vrelians, they should know. We've been ready for this war since before we left Earth. We just hoped we'd never have to fight it." The Admiral and his escort marched out of the chamber, leaving chaos behind them. Jiwoo remained at the human delegation's position. Delegates approached her with questions, demands, accusations. She answered none of them. Her job had been to play weak. That job was done. Now came the part her species was actually good at. War. The Vrelian home system had not seen war in 3 generations. Their ancestors had fought to establish the empire. But that was history now. The current generation knew only victory and conquest. Their defense fleet of 4,000 ships had never faced a real threat. That changed when the sensors detected something impossible at the edge of the system. Commander Gitae sat in the command chair of the UWSS Retribution, humanity's newest and deadliest battleship. Around him, 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The maneuver required precision beyond anything the Vrelians had seen. One miscalculation, and ships could collide. But every human vessel appeared exactly where it was supposed to be, exactly when it was supposed to be there. "All ships reporting ready status," his tactical officer reported. "Fleet formation, holding steady." Gitae studied the tactical display. The Vrelian home fleet was already moving to intercept, thousands of ships swarming like angry insects. On paper, the humans were outnumbered more than 10 to 1. On paper, they should run. But humanity had never been good at following what made sense on paper. "Open a channel to the Vrelian government," Gitae ordered. "All frequencies." The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, sir." Gitae took a breath and began the message he had rehearsed for weeks. "This is Captain Gitae of the United World Space Force, commanding the UWSS Retribution. Under United Nations Security Resolution 7834, the Vrelian Empire is hereby charged with genocide against the human colony of New Haven. You have 1 hour to surrender your government and military leadership for trial. Failure to comply will result in total war." The response came quickly. War Prime Daesung's face appeared on screen, laughing. "You bring 300 ships against 4,000 and make demands? Humanity's arrogance matches its stupidity. You have 59 minutes, Gitae replied calmly, and cut the transmission. The wait began. Gitae used the time to review his crew. Every station was manned by personnel, who had trained for this moment their entire lives. His tactical officer Min Seo had run this exact scenario in simulation 500 times. His weapons officer Kyung Ho knew every system on the ship better than his own home. His chief engineer Yoonji could repair critical damage while under fire. They were ready. Humanity was ready. The hour passed. The Vrelian government sent no response except their fleet's advance. 4,000 ships moving in standard attack formation, confident in their numerical superiority. "They're not surrendering," Minseo reported unnecessarily. "Then we proceed with the operation," Gite said. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta. Weapons free. Engage at will." The human fleet split into smaller groups with practiced precision. Each group had a specific target, a specific role, a specific objective. They had practiced this in the hidden shipyards for years. The Vrelians opened fire first, eager to destroy the insolent humans quickly. Thousands of plasma bolts streaked across space, a wall of green fire that should have overwhelmed the smaller fleet. But the human ships simply weren't there anymore. Their faster-than-light drives activated in short, precise bursts, called microjumps. They appeared and disappeared across the battlefield, never staying in one place long enough to be effectively targeted. "Their targeting systems can't track our jumps," Minseo reported with satisfaction. "They're firing at where we were, not where we are." "Good," Jite said. "Weapons, you are free to fire." The UWSS Retribution's main railgun fired. The weapon accelerated a solid projectile to 0.3% of light speed in less than a second. The Vrelian flagship's shields, designed to stop energy weapons and slow-moving missiles, were useless against kinetic weapons moving that fast. The projectile punched through the shield like it wasn't there. It hit the Vrelian ship's hull and kept going, passing completely through the vessel and out the other side. The kinetic energy transfer was devastating. The flagship broke apart in seconds. Across the battlefield, human ships fired similar weapons with similar results. Vrelian shields failed. Vrelian hulls crumpled. Vrelian ships died. The enemy tried to adapt. They concentrated fire, hoping to overwhelm individual human ships. It didn't work. Human point defense systems tracked every incoming projectile and energy beam, destroying or deflecting them before they could hit. Thousands of tiny laser turrets and small railguns created a defensive screen that seemed almost impenetrable. "They're learning," Minseo warned, "adjusting their targeting algorithms." "Then it's time to show them something new," Jite replied. "Deploy the neural disruptors." This was humanity's so-called humanitarian weapon, though there was nothing humane about it. The neural disruptor sent focused electromagnetic pulses that interfered with Vrelian nervous systems. It didn't kill them. It just shut them down, leaving them conscious but completely paralyzed. The UWSS Retribution fired the weapon at a cluster of enemy cruisers. The effect was immediate. Vrelian crews across 3 ships suddenly found themselves unable to move. They could see and hear and feel everything, but their bodies wouldn't respond. Their ships drifted helplessly as life support continued to function, but weapons and engines went offline. Other human ships deployed the same weapon. Within minutes, hundreds of Vrelian vessels were disabled. Their crews trapped in their own bodies. Dae-sung watched in horror from his command ship as his fleet fell apart. The humans fought with a sophistication and brutality he couldn't comprehend. They used weapons he had never imagined. They employed tactics that seemed impossible. And worst of all, they seemed to know exactly how to counter every Vrelian strategy. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human flagship," he ordered desperately. 200 Vrelian ships turned toward the UWSS Retribution and unleashed everything they had. The barrage was enough to destroy a planet. It should have been enough to destroy one human ship, but the Retribution's shields held. Not just held, but barely flickered. The ship's defensive screens used technology humanity had stolen from 6 different species and improved. Multiple layers of protection, each one designed to counter specific weapon types. Energy shields for plasma. Kinetic shields for projectiles. Point defense for missiles. And when a Vrelian torpedo somehow got through all of that, the ship's armor stopped it. The Retribution was built like Earth's ancient battleships, with thick armor plating made from materials that could withstand tremendous punishment. Shields at 87%, Mincio reported. Hull integrity unchanged. No casualties. Gite allowed himself a small smile. Target their command ship. Full broadside. Gite allowed himself. The Retribution turned, bringing all its weapons to bear. Railguns, lasers, particle beams, missiles. Everything fired at once. The Vrelian command ship tried to evade, but it was too slow. Human weapons found their mark. Dae-sung felt his ship shudder and die around him. Power failed. Life support went offline. Emergency lighting provided just enough illumination to see his crew dying at their stations. Then human soldiers in powered armor appeared. They had boarded somehow, cutting through the disabled hull like it was paper. They moved through the ship with mechanical precision, stunning any Vrelian who resisted and securing those who surrendered. Dae-sung found himself dragged from his command chair by armored soldiers. They said nothing, just carried him to their boarding craft and dumped him on the deck like cargo. Other Vrelian commanders met the same fate. Human ships boarded the disabled vessels and extracted their leadership. Not everyone. Just the ones responsible for decisions. The ones who had ordered the attack on New Haven. The ones who would stand trial. The battle lasted 17 minutes. In that time, the Vrelian home fleet was effectively destroyed. Half their ships were disabled by neural disruptors. Their crews paralyzed but alive. Another quarter were destroyed outright, targeted because they had refused to stop firing even when defeat was obvious. The remaining quarter surrendered. Not one human ship was lost. 3 were damaged enough to require repairs. 12 crew members were injured. No one died. It was the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Gite stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the tactical display showing hundreds of disabled enemy ships. He felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a cold certainty that this had been necessary. "Captain," his communications officer called. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vrelian government. They want to negotiate surrender terms." "Tell them we don't negotiate," Gite replied. "Unconditional surrender, or we proceed to the next phase of the operation." The officer relayed the message. The response came quickly. Acceptance. Gite ordered boarding parties to secure all major Vrelian facilities. Government buildings, military bases, shipyards. Within 6 hours, human forces controlled every critical location in the Vrelian home system. In the detention area of the Retribution, Dae-sung sat in a cell designed for human prisoners. It was too small for his four-armed body. The temperature was too cold. The lighting too bright. Everything about it was uncomfortable, and he suspected that was intentional. Captain Gite visited him there. The human officer stood outside the cell, looking at the Vrelian commander with an expression Dae-sung couldn't read. 3 million, Gite said quietly. "That's how many people you killed at New Haven. Men, women, children. You murdered them because you thought humanity was too weak to respond." Dae-sung said nothing. What could he say? "You will stand trial," Gite continued. "You will face the families of every person you killed. You will hear their names, all 3 million names, and then you will spend the rest of your life in a penal colony, watched over by the survivors of New Haven." The captain turned to leave, then paused. "We didn't want this war. We tried for 37 years to be peaceful, to be better than our history. You made that impossible. Remember that, in all the years you have left. This is what you chose." Gite walked away, leaving Dae-sung alone in the too small, too cold, too bright cell. Back on the bridge, Mincio reported that all objectives had been secured. The Vrelian Empire had fallen in less than a day. "Send a message to Earth," Gite ordered. "Mission accomplished. The war criminals are in custody. The Vrelian Empire is no longer a threat." As the message was transmitted, Gite looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, learning, understanding that humanity's peaceful facade had been just that, a facade. The galaxy had awakened a sleeping giant, and now it would have to live with the consequences. 6 months after the war ended, the Galactic Council met under very different circumstances. Human warships patrolled the space around the Council station, not as conquerors, but as security. The Council had requested Earth's protection after 3 smaller wars broke out in the power vacuum left by the Vrelian Empire's fall. Ambassador Ji Woo no longer sat at the edge of the chamber. Humanity's platform had been moved to the inner circle, alongside the major powers. Admiral Taewon sat beside her in full uniform, a reminder that Earth's diplomatic voice now came with military strength to back it up. The Council was discussing the fate of the former Vrelian territories. 12 star systems needed new governance. Billions of Vrelian citizens needed reassurance that they wouldn't be punished for their government's crimes. Council Speaker Veltok looked uncomfortable in his role now. The old power structure had crumbled, and he was desperately trying to maintain relevance. The Council suggests that Vrelian space be divided among neighboring species as reparations for their aggressive expansion. No, Taewon said simply. The chamber fell silent. 6 months ago, such a blunt refusal would have been unthinkable from a human representative. Now, no one dared argue. The Vrelian people are not responsible for their government's actions, Taewon continued. They will be allowed to rebuild under supervised democracy. Peacekeeping forces from multiple species, including humans, will ensure stability during the transition. Several delegates began to protest, but Taewon cut them off. This is not a negotiation. This is how it will be. Any species that attempts to claim Vrelian territory by force will answer to Earth. The protests died immediately. No one wanted to face humanity's fleet. Ji Woo stood to add context. We didn't fight this war to conquer or colonize. We fought it because 3 million of our people were murdered. Justice has been served. Now we focus on preventing it from happening again. On a penal colony in the Outer Rim, War Prime Dae Sung performed his daily labor alongside the other convicted war criminals. The work was hard but not cruel. The conditions were harsh but not inhumane. Earth had been very specific about that. Punishment, not torture. But the real punishment wasn't the labor. It was the guards. Every guard on the penal colony was a survivor of New Haven or a family member of someone who died there. They didn't abuse the prisoners. They didn't need to. Their presence was punishment enough. Every day, Dae Sung saw the faces of people whose lives he had destroyed. Every day, he was reminded of what he had done. The colony administrator was a woman named Sora. She had been mayor of New Haven when it fell. She had watched her city burn. Now she watched over the people responsible. Sometimes she visited Dae Sung in his cell. Not to gloat. Just to talk. To make sure he understood. My daughter was 7 when your ships came, she told him once. She wanted to be a scientist, study alien biology. She was so excited about all the different species in the galaxy. Dae Sung said nothing. What could he say? She died when your soldiers opened fire on a crowd of civilians trying to evacuate. Sora continued quietly. She was holding my hand. I felt her fingers go slack. She stood to leave, then paused. I don't hate you. Hate would be easier. I just need you to understand that those 3 million weren't numbers. They were people. They had dreams. They had futures. You took all of that away. After she left, Dae Sung sat in silence. He would have 30 more years to think about her words. 30 years to remember every decision that led to New Haven. 30 years to understand that humanity's vengeance wasn't death, it was memory. Meanwhile, the human intelligence officer Hyejin faced a different fate. She had been returned to Earth after the war, arrested for treason and collaboration with an enemy power. Her trial was brief. The evidence overwhelming. She was not executed. Earth had abandoned capital punishment decades ago and wouldn't restart it even for traitors. Instead, she received life imprisonment in a standard civilian facility. No special treatment, no extra punishment, just decades to think about how she had helped the Vrelians plan their attack. Other prisoners avoided her. Even criminals had standards. Back at the Galactic Council, President Nari addressed the assembled delegates via hologram from Earth. She looked tired. Leading humanity through its first galactic war had aged her visibly. 6 months ago, we revealed our true military strength, she began. We showed you weapons you didn't know existed. Tactics you couldn't counter. Ships you couldn't match. And yes, we won the war in 17 minutes. She paused, looking at each delegate in turn. But victory in battle doesn't mean we want to rule the galaxy. It doesn't mean we seek dominance. It means we can protect ourselves and those who cannot protect themselves. The hologram shifted, showing images of human ships responding to distress calls across the galaxy. Escorting trade convoys, providing disaster relief. Defending smaller species from pirates and raiders. Humanity has a choice. Nari continued. We can be the conquerors our history suggests. We can use our strength to dominate, to expand, to build an empire. She shook her head. We choose differently. We choose to be guardians, to protect the weak, to maintain peace. But make no mistake, we will defend our interests. We will protect our people. And we will respond with overwhelming force to any species that threatens genocide. Admiral Taiwan stood to add military context. Earth's fleet is no longer hidden. You know what we have. You know what we can do. This transparency is intentional. We want you to understand that war with humanity is unwinnable. He gestured to the holographic display showing human ships across the galaxy. But we also want you to see that our strength serves peace. We patrol trade routes that were unsafe for decades. We respond to disasters in systems that have no defense force. We enforce the laws this council passes, but has never had the power to uphold. A delegate from a smaller species raised a tentative question. What does Earth want in return? Fair trade, Jiwoo replied simply. Equal representation in the council, and respect. We're tired of being dismissed. Tired of being underestimated. Tired of watching the strong prey on the weak while the council debates endlessly. She looked around the chamber. We didn't ask for this role. We wanted to be peaceful traders and explorers. But the galaxy has shown us that peace requires strength. So now we provide that strength. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who needs it. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Earth's proposals were accepted. New Haven was rebuilt with support from a dozen species who wanted to show solidarity with humanity. The Vrelian territories transitioned to democracy under international supervision, and humanity took its place as one of the galaxy's major powers. But the real change happened in quieter moments. Human ships began carrying medical supplies to disaster zones. Human engineers helped rebuild infrastructure on war-torn worlds. Human diplomats mediated disputes between species that had been fighting for generations. And slowly, carefully, humanity built something it had never managed on Earth. A reputation for being strong and fair, powerful and just, capable of terrible violence, but choosing peace whenever possible. 5 years after the war, Ambassador Jiwoo retired. She had spent 17 years as humanity's voice in the galaxy, 12 of them playing weak and 5 proving strong. She was tired. On her last day, she met with Admiral Taewon in a quiet observation lounge overlooking Earth. Do you think it worked? She asked. The 37 years of pretending? Taewon considered the question. We hoped it would make us peaceful. Instead, it just delayed the inevitable. But maybe that delay mattered. Maybe those years taught us to value peace enough that we don't abuse our strength now. And if another species challenges us? Jiwoo asked. If someone else decides to test humanity? Taewon smiled grimly. Then they'll learn what the Vrelians learned. That humanity's kindness is genuine, but our capacity for violence is bottomless. We can be your best friend, or your worst nightmare. The choice is yours. On New Haven, now rebuilt and thriving again, a memorial stood in the central plaza. 3 million names carved in stone. Every person who died. Every life that was lost. Children played around the memorial, laughing and chasing each other. Parents watched them fondly. The colony had recovered. Life continued. But every year on the anniversary of the massacre, the colony held a ceremony of remembrance. Everyone gathered at the memorial. They read names, they told stories, they made sure no one forgot, and above them, human warships patrolled silently. A promise carved in steel and fire. Never again. Captain Gite, now promoted to admiral, commanded the defense force for the rebuilt colonies. He took the responsibility seriously. His ships practiced constantly, running drills that pushed crews to their limits. They would never be caught unprepared again. "Do you think we'll face another war?" his second officer asked him once. Gite looked at the tactical display showing human ships across 4 rebuilt colony systems. "I hope not, but hope isn't a strategy. We prepare for war so we can maintain peace. We show strength so we never have to use it. And if we do have to use it, then we remember New Haven." Gite replied quietly. "We remember why we fight. Not for conquest. Not for glory. But to protect those who can't protect themselves." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was no longer the weak newcomer. No longer the species to be dismissed and ignored. They were the ones with the fleet. The weapons, the will to use both when necessary. But more importantly, they were the ones who chose not to use them unless forced. Who extended friendship first and showed strength only when threatened. Who remembered both their peaceful dreams and their violent history. The Vrelians had thought humanity wouldn't retaliate. They were the last species to make that mistake. Because now everyone knew the truth. Humanity could be the galaxy's greatest ally. Patient, generous, creative, and kind. But push them too far, threaten their people, massacre their colonies, and they would show you exactly why they climbed to the top of Earth's food chain. Why they survived ice ages and plagues. Why they conquered their own world before reaching for the stars. The fleet of vengeance had returned to port. But it was always ready. Always watching. Always prepared to launch again if needed. Because humanity had learned the hard way that peace required 2 things: the desire to be peaceful and the strength to enforce peace when others refused. They had both now, and the galaxy was safer for it.